Hey, hey, hey.
Howdy.
Um, yeah, so I titled this one Representation of All Sides, Creating a Healthy Debate. Um, so I gave you a minor heads up about it. I was actually listening to what was somewhat of a it was a bit of a frustrating conversation between I think it's Posey Parker and I'm trying to remember this other guy's name. Posey Parker, who's like this radical feminist, like I guess a turf is what they call her. Which I don't even agree with. I don't understand how turf is even like necessarily a bad thing anymore. It doesn't make any sense to me. But it was him. It was her with he was the James Lindsay.
Yep.
There's the other guy who
So
was
you said Rosie Parker in first place?
Posey Parker.
I just want to remember, see if I know who that is.
Yeah. She's this blonde haired.
Yeah, I see her.
Yeah.
I don't remember who she is right off the top of my head for some reason.
Okay, so she's
I think
basically
she's an old rock and roll somebody probably.
no. So she kind of came to fame fighting for women's rights, and more specifically, like women's rights and identity as women. So when the trans conversation came in, that's basically when she kind of like came out because she was like, hey, Peter Boghossian, that's who the guy is for the interview. I just remembered it. And so basically her whole thing was, okay, there's all these people who are coming to say, like trans women who are coming to say trans women are women. And she's like, no, you're not. You're not real women. And everybody gets all butthurt. And
Yeah, so she's an OG. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the conversation was a little frustrating to listen to because at least the first quarter of it or so, and I understand him doing it, and he's done this in the past, and this is kind of how he does things, but it was a little monotonous and everything, and just kind of his presentation. But what he was doing is like saying his position or saying her position back to her in a way that she would agree with it. And I have no qualms about doing that. I think I do the same. It was just kind of like it was like at least a third of the podcast that was going on. I was like, oh my goodness, it's a lot. That's kind of not really the point. The point was kind of like as she kind of goes, it can kind of sound because he's like, okay, is this what you're saying? And she's like, yeah. And then he's like, but what you're not saying is this. Is that correct? And you don't hold these positions. You hold these positions, but you don't hold these positions. And so it was kind of like when she would talk about the positions that she would hold, they would sound relatively extreme, or they could sound extreme. But
was he trying to paint her as extreme, or was he just trying
no,
to really
he's
push
trying
her
to
into
understand
agreeing
her. He's just trying to understand
Okay.
her. And he does a really good job of kind of painting that picture. But through that conversation, I was like, she does have strong opinions, and she is unwilling to she's unwilling to give an inch. She's not like he has disagreements, and he's kind of trying to bring her more over to her side a little bit, but not like, hey, there was nothing combative. That was just kind of like little bits and pieces of differences, right? And he's just kind of like, well, maybe a more normal version would be kind of this. Maybe a kind of a tame version would be kind of like this. And I respect his tactic. I respect what he's doing, but it kind of got me to thinking about like the extremes, like the way I kind of am starting to view things in this larger public space is that we need to have people who have a stance on something, and they are largely unwavering from it. And that's their stance, right? And I actually respect somebody, and I don't, at this point, it's kind of almost like I don't even care what your actual positions are. If you are willing to take a stance and stand by it through thick and thin, I think that can be a very healthy thing for society overall. Because it basically is like, okay, here's somebody who is embodying an idea as a public person. I think for the common folk, we should be very malleable. We should be, oh, this is what we think, and okay,
do you think people should be representing a position so that we can
use it as a tool? Like, here's a very strong feminist, basically. It's a very strong feminist, also known as a TERF. And she has very strong positions and ideas. And I think that those positions and ideas should be challenged, but they should be challenged against somebody else who has different views and opinions on something, without the expectation that she's going to change her mind or the other person's going to change their mind. Because it's really up to us as the audience to listen to it and say, okay, and to also parse things out, to say, look, she has positions that I disagree with. I don't take that extreme, but she's got a point when she talks about this and she says this, that she makes sense. And so to have those kinds of personalities.
So when I go into arguments or discussions about things like that, for the most part, I have that take of I'm not trying to convince somebody, but there are certain holdouts for but we have to have some sort of common ground somewhere. So like I really want to bring people over to at least there's this, right? At least there's this. And
well, that's the common that's the common folk position. Yeah.
Sure. So it's hard for me to criticize it, because everyone that is on stage is also kind of a common folk, in their own eyes in some ways too, right? I mean,
well, so like take Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was a very, I think, and personally I feel like it's a really, really unfortunate thing what happened to him. I understand it. But I don't think that is something that should have killed his career and killed his momentum and killed the force that was Milo Yiannopoulos. Yeah. Right? If he's causing problems and people are getting upset, that's okay. What that means to me and the public, I think, is that it's something that should be talked about. It should be addressed. It should be debated, because the people who follow these people, these are we may dub them as influencers, but they're really representatives of an idea. And I think that if we all kind of just understood that there are people in the public life who are representatives
of certain ideas, you can either use them as a boogeyman or whatever you want to do, however
they shouldn't do. Yeah.
Right. But they shouldn't be trying to deplatform them.
Yeah.
Which, of course, we heard in regards to the Tucker story. We have AOC saying that deplatforming works, and she's endorsing a member of that faction of people. So, yes, there is the idea of deplatforming it's something that shouldn't be there. It should be all the ideas on the table. There should be an Alex Jones, easier to get to. Obviously, you can still get to him if you want to.
Sure.
But nobody, I mean, you can't have Joe Blow find him. It has to be like, hey, I know this about this guy, and I don't even watch him. I've never seen him because it went away before I even knew he existed, really.
Oh man, you missed out. He was a wild one back in the day too.
Yeah.
Well, he taught me a lot about critical thinking. Like, he taught me a lesson about critical thinking.
I kind of got out of the shock jock type of thing. Even though I thought at the time he was just a shock jock, that he said some things maybe they're true, but he's just crazy. So I used to, for a period of time, like watching Howard Stern and listening to BJ Shea and those type of
Oh
those things
yeah,
where they
yeah,
do things that are different. But like BJ Shea is very mellow now. He's nothing.
yeah,
He's not even a shock jock. You can't call him. He's very
yeah.
mainstream. But and I guess there's Opie and Anthony, which was funny.
Yeah, I mean, there was Tom Likas. There was so many.
Oh
different
yes, Tom Likas. Oh my
Tom
gosh.
Likas.
I could see. I got out of it. I listened to that stuff for a little bit, and then I was like, I just can't. And so
you know what?
I went away.
So here's something that my mom actually said is she used to listen to Tom Likas because she could get an idea of what was kind of going on, what was happening in men with men, how were men kind of thinking about things, right? And she could get it from both sides, from the people who were calling in and from his advice. And so she found it as a useful tool. And in a sense, that's kind of what I'm getting at is like, look, Tom Likas was he was out there, and he was almost like in my world,
like Andrew Tate type of.
Yeah, he was the guy who would tell you this is what girls want, this is how you deal with them. He's basically
this is all they deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be like, don't give them this, they don't deserve that.
Yeah, and he would talk smack to their face and everything. And it was funny because like they would love it, like even the girls would be like,
it's funny. There are a lot of girls that will just take it and love it. And, but like I don't like that is true, but it just is true.
But there is truth to it, it doesn't mean that it's a blanket thing, but I think that it's a really healthy thing for our culture and society to have these ideas represented, but then not to just have them out there and just be able to exist, but to also compete with other ideas and other people, right? And I think that there needs to be some sort of space that gets created where we're able to put these ideas and concepts of people who have, because I mean, when you look at like when you look at the trans debate, you don't have, who is there who is transgender that is actively out there pushing the trans ideology, the trans positions as a big major public figure? Like you don't have any Caitlyn Jenner. That's right. It?
Yeah,
which who doesn't even really only participates in that stuff when is forced into it. It's the only time that she ever participates in it, right? So it's like we have all of these people who are like, there's a problem with transgender here, and there's problems with, and then somebody else is like, here's another thing about transgender that's a problem, and here's another, and there's nobody that they can even talk to or address because they're talking to an amorphous idea of temporary representatives who are just popping in, saying something stupid, and then leaving.
And they're just talking to a narrative in general. They just don't. There's no receptacle for the ideas to. Yes, I see what you're saying.
They show up to protest, and they like you listen to the interviews of them saying, "Hey, so what are you here protesting against, Michael Knowles or whoever?" Yeah. And they're like, "Yeah, I've never listened to him. I just heard so and so had this clip,
so therefore, yeah."
Yeah, and it's like there's no rationale behind the actions that people are taking. It's all just they're acting off of ignorance. They have no clue, and so it's like they really should be a stage, right? And this is, I mean, I could get into. I don't know if I.
So I'm unfortunate. This is an unfortunate thing. Unfortunately, there are a small number. There are a small number of them, and then of them, there is a small number of people that are together enough to be able to be rational on that level, where they can take a position that is not just emotional, because it is an emotional process, and people are going through a thing, and it is a lot of times it's an identity struggle that they're going through constantly, and it's hard to find these few individuals that can deal with all those struggles and then be some sort of rock for that is not just like shouting down people or just saying, I'm not going to talk to you because you're mean or whatever else. Like I don't see how you, I mean, it might be great if there was one of those, but I just don't know if that formula
that's the problem.
Formula has resulted in number of people that can fill that role right now.
Right. And that's almost a sign to me, that kind of comes off as a sign of like, this is a broken ideology. If you can't have somebody who is able to represent this idea, and you are unable and also unwilling to pit that person with that idea against somebody else, it's broken. You look at Christianity. I mean, I'm sure you're probably Christian, but I went years and years and years, and I was listening to all of these people making all of these arguments about, you know, the existence of God and this and that. And regardless of how much I disagreed with their approach and the arguments that they might make, they were there and they didn't stop. They kept coming. They said, oh yeah, well, how about this? How about this? How about this? How about this? And it was one person after another, and they would all have varying different arguments to some degree, but they all kind of hit on the same point. But that showed like authenticity in the idea. It showed strength in the idea, and it showed representation. And when they were able to do that, I mean, I had massive respect that, like, in the face of what they're in my opinion, and some of them, because I would listen to certain radio shows, people, and it would be like a call-in kind of a show, and they would call in with these really bad arguments, but they would do it, and then they would come out, and there would be like you know, more of a mainstream debater type person, and they would lay out this whole case, and they would do it really respectfully, and it would make sense, you know, and they could get their points across.
What typically happens, though, is that situation that made Ben Shapiro famous in the first place. Have you seen him with the interview with the trans on stage, and the guys goes like, if you say that again, I'll put you in a whatever. So
you'll leave here in an ambulance, in a stretcher.
People, they try to have these conversations,
and they get too emotional.
If they can't get past the idea that like the Ben Shapiro, he's not gonna you know, call you a she if you're born with male parts. He's just not going to, and he's gonna make this argument. So like
that's part of his argument.
You got to accept that he disagrees with you in the first place.
Yeah.
And be able to intellectually engage with him instead of always being stuck on that, or else you're never going to have a representation. You're just not going to, because if you don't have to, you're not even able to have the argument. It's just more like, nope, you hate us, so therefore we're not going to listen to you, and then we're just going to fight forever.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate that they don't. I feel like, for one, we don't have a space. We don't have a space to have those conversations, because if you have these ideas that are controversial,
I mean, we have the internet. We can have the space anywhere. I just think we are short on the people to do it, and without being canceled for saying it.
Well, that's the problem, though, right? Is that, like, there are so many people out there. I'm sure there's tons of people out there, but they don't have the space, they don't have the following, they don't have the reputation, and then they don't even have a platform, because they'll get banned if they say something. I mean, Andrew Tate, he got banned off of platforms that he wasn't even a part of, right? Just because he had these ideas. And look, you can hate the ideas, but if you're just gonna hate it and then mute, like society wise, you're gonna mute him. Like, you're not doing anybody any favors.
So this is not a one-to-one comparison, but you do have people out there that are on the left that are doing things like gays against groomers, that are gay people that are fighting against the idea of putting sexual content for kids in schools, and basically they're calling that grooming. Grooming is not a thing we're allowed to use anymore as a statement, because it's
being applied to groups that they don't want it to be applied to.
Right. So the idea is gays against groomers is there because they don't like the idea of sexualizing children, and by doing so, it's like you're almost introducing them to a sexual lifestyle by introducing them to these different sexualized identities. So anyways, so they exist, but they are completely just shunned by the left, even though they're like mostly leftists on there. It's
right. And that's because there's because they don't need to. I think here's the truth of the matter is I think that what makes them, this is much worse for society, but when you don't have a leader, when you don't have someone who represents an idea, instead you have a bunch of people who are effectively operate as activists to push this idea through brief, virtually anonymous comments that are of no value, but come in mass. When you can produce and push out all of that, there's nobody to take down. You can't say, oh, Andrew Tate, I don't like this thing that he said, I'm going to take him down. Jordan Peterson, I don't like what he said, I'm going to take him down. Like, you don't have that potential. You don't have that option. And I think that kind of goes, it almost makes me think about like Martin Luther King Jr., how he was this main representative guy, right? Now, what he was able to do was he was able to effectively accomplish his overall goal before being assassinated. But if he was assassinated early on, then that would have just been wiped out. You wouldn't have even been able to have that idea.
Yeah.
Maybe he could have been a martyr if it had become, and he probably ended up becoming a martyr just for that idea. And so it's a complicated situation, but I think what needs to end up happening is that there needs to be a marketplace of ideas. There needs to be, as Elon Musk would say, like a town square, a town where everybody can kind of get together and be able to have these conversations.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously Twitter's trying to be that place. It's a nightmare, apparently, software wise, because they try to fix it and it's just more and more code. They released they released a lot of the source code for the algorithm on GitHub a couple weeks ago. They did a live stream about it and said, hey, let us know what you find and we'll fix it. We try to fix all the major stuff, but send us your things and let us know, because there's plenty of programmers and things out there that love to just get their hands into it. He thought about at one point they might just have to rewrite all of Twitter. They might just start from scratch at a certain point if they can't figure it out, because they just have people that are just shadow banned still for no reason, and they try to undo it, and they don't understand what's even in place. There's just so much there, so much spaghetti code mixed in there. So anyways, Twitter tries to be that spot, but otherwise, I mean,
I think what we're doing
is we're creating spots. Like, we're trying to create like a Rumble reality.
See, I don't trust all these guys. To be honest, like the only person I really trust to have actual kind of power is Elon Musk. Oddly enough, he's the only one I actually trust.
We can't live like that forever, so we need right. He's not going to live forever.
He needs to be able to make this thing, and I think it can be made through Twitter. Now, my concept, I've made a whole thing on how it should be done and all this stuff, but the way that it looks like to me is, okay, you've got current Twitter. Make how there's the For You tab, and then there's the following tab. Make another tab. Just have another tab, and in that tab is a whole new system. It's a whole new system. And in that system, there would be I'll kind of break it down briefly here.
I would like just to choose your own algorithm personally. I would like to be able to
That's not gonna help to create the healthy debate, though. You choose your own algorithm. You choose your own bubble. That's all that's really gonna end up
right,
doing.
but you could choose your different feeds. So you can choose your feeds based on different algorithms. So if you had like some sort of other site saying, here you can use all the different things and people can write these different algorithms, things like, oh, I want to try his algorithm, add this to create this other feed. So you have like like different tabs, right, where you can choose which ones to look at. Oh, I want to look at stuff, I want to have a tech algorithm, one that just deals with all the tech stuff, one that deals with the political things.
That's really just a different, but we can already do that. Just create another profile and like a few different things.
Right?
Yeah. And you just like a few, like I'm gonna use this. I mean, I have a few different
I don't know.
Twitter accounts.
I'm not a power user of Twitter.
I mean, I have like 4. I have like
I look at Elon
my
memes
asshole one. I have my intellectual one. I have my kind of like gaming one or whatever. I have a few different ones, and it's just like they're just kind of geared towards whatever the interest is that I want to, how I want to participate. I'll use this account. If I want to participate intellectually and like actually be myself, then I'll use this one. But I think that what really needs to happen is that people need to be able to have the space and the opportunity to, you can kind of think of it, okay, it's a grand narrative, right? That's what we're effectively missing in today's society, where we're missing a grand narrative. It's been shattered because it's the legacy media has been in control of it for so long.
There isn't even an idea that America is an awesome place anymore with everybody.
Right. We don't even have that.
We don't agree in the American pie and just the picket fence and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We believe in our individual dreams, and if we don't have it, the whole American dream is dead.
Yeah. And so I think what needs to happen is a space needs to be created that is fully accessible to anyone and everyone at all times, that can be looked back on, that does not have interruption and poisoning of the well. And I think that Twitter, I believe that Twitter could be that space. Yeah. Create another tab. Or did you have something?
No. If we clone Elon Musk.
Yeah. Hey, we got Elon Musk as it is. Hey, we can work on cloning.
Yeah.
Sure, but take advantage of what we have now.
I mean, if there wasn't a Wikipedia that was moderated by Elon Musk, that would be like the most awesome thing for the world, honestly.
I mean, I was thinking about I'm getting so many thoughts. I should just write down like little notes.
Because Wikipedia sucks because there's just an army of people that want to tell the narrative, and so it's not even real.
Right. And so
but here's if you had a community notes type of system in place for the Wikipedia, it might be a lot better too.
But that's just
basically look back in history. If you're talking looking back in history, you're not going to look back at 34,000 interactions within a certain period of time, right?
Right. Which is why, okay, so this is where it kind of gets to being the representative, having somebody who represents a thing.
So you're saying like Jordan Peterson, therefore he kind of represents this, and so you can look at him and you can see the ideas around him
of whatever it is that he's pushing, right? So right. I like to use the Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris debate, religious debate. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yep. A long time ago, but yes.
Yeah, and so I think that if you could have something like that is put out, and it would be very complicated, I would admit, it would be very complicated to structure it and make and for how it would go, but it would be structured well, where you basically have Jordan Peterson and he would write out whatever he wanted, and he could make, and then he'd have like little allies or whatever you would call them, and they could effectively translate into, they could reinterpret the things that he says that other people can then comment on. but nobody can comment on Jordan Peterson's things. The only person who could would be Sam Harris.
Right.
That's it. That's
So
it.
you have a conversation set in stone, but
Yep.
then we can also interact with it through kind of a third parties.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like say if I was an ally and I hear I hate the term ally at this point, but say I'm an ally and I say, okay, this is, and I'm looking at the things that he says, and I can say, okay, this is what he's talking about, and here's references of what it is that he's saying. Now, other people like you would be able to say, oh, I want to comment on what Jordan Peterson says, but I can't. So I'm going to comment on somebody else who's the ally who's understanding it, and I can use that. But if anybody wants which is, it would be the main source that people would first land on. They would land on on what Jordan Peterson first said, and then they would be able to interpret that on their own firsthand, and then they can look at, okay, here's all this other stuff, and they can bitch and they can whine and they can complain and all this stuff. But to create a space, and there could be all kinds of like, you could cut out a section of him and you can say, okay, for this, I want to say blah, 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 blah. And we kind of break out into a whole bunch of other things. So I think that there's a lot that needs to happen. And I think that we need to have people who have these hard-lined stances. I don't care whether it's a Nazi or a vegan or PETA, like, go for it. Take your wild, crazy positions. I'm perfectly fine with that, but they should be able to be pitted against one another. I think that's very important.
I think that it's not too far into the future where we're going to be able to have intellectual avatars that represent ideas pretty well according to what we decide from that intellectual point of view. That's not ideal, but at the same time, I could see someone being like even if they just recreated people from the past, like the Margaret Thatcher, way of thinking. Thatcher, sorry. That's a Thatcher. Yeah, I'm sick. I'm allowed to do that. And or a Rush Limbaugh or a trying to think of who would be a thinker, or a Socrates even type of thing. Or we could create thinkers, we can create things and have them kind of argue points against each other. That'd be interesting.
Well, that was something that I made note of earlier when you had said, "Oh, well, we need to clone Elon Musk," and something that I was thinking is, and maybe it will actually even be possible. It actually probably will be. It might even be possible now to train an AI to effectively think like you. So then you effectively will live on as an AI personality.
If there is enough sampling, then yes, it can right now. The problem is the sample size.
It would be me, and it would be how much because I would like, if Elon Musk wanted Elon Musk to continue to live forever as an intelligence, right? Create an AI, and he could just sit there and just basically have conversations, talk about anything and everything that he possibly can. Take like 2 years of just like, I'm sitting down and I'm just having conversations, and this thing's asking me questions, and I'm feeding it answers, and boom, all of a sudden it's kind of got this life.
I can just imagine his response to that question, where he'd be like, that's a certain level of what is it, arrogance or something, or is there a certain level of something he wouldn't possess? It's like he doesn't need to live forever. He needs, I don't think that. I don't know. It's weird.
Maybe he's not the type to want to do that, but it's like, hey, you know what? I mean, okay, think about this though, right? Wouldn't it be interesting if you could talk to your great 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 grandfather?
Yes, that'd be great. You can record the voice, and it'll be out there forever, and you can kind of feel like you're talking to him.
You could say, hey man, I got some advice. Like I want to, or like, hey, I need some advice. I got something going on in my life, and I don't know what to do. And he can say, well, back in my time,
make sure you do your chores first, and get the cow
tell you
milked.
what's important. Who
Get
knows?
the cow milked, and then you can go do other things, right?
And he might be limited. He might be limited on what he would be able to tell people, and like how he could help them out, by the time constraints. But I mean, there's some things like maybe you run into issues with the relationships. Maybe your great 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 grandfather got married at 18 and died with the same woman. Maybe that's what happened. And it's like, how did you manage to do that? What were the key factors? And you could learn these certain kinds of things from the past, because the past always repeats itself.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
I don't think it's a bad idea to have some AI.
Unfortunately, we're not going to get your goal of what you're talking about at first, like representations from these different ideas, these little things that we can, that are avatars that represent. I mean, we're going to have actual digital avatars. We're not going to have real avatars. That's what's going to actually happen. We're going to have a digital Rush Limbaugh. We're going to have a digital a Trump. We're gonna have a digital everything.
Well, that comes. I feel like that comes later. What needs to happen first for society is real people having real conversations.
Yes.
With their real positions.
Yes, and that is exactly why we are here, and we're really talking.
Yeah.
But everyone has their own. Like, no one in the world knows what we're talking about right now. They're all feeding their dog or whatever. It's not because we're not big or anything. It's like everyone is doing their own little life battle, and it's not a community battle. It's not like a community conversation that people are having regularly in a certain direction. It's
amorphous.
I think the best thing we can struggle for is having civility somehow pushed back into the narrative of society to make sure
that how does that happen? I think one of the only ways to have that happen is to, in effect, create the space.
It's just kill everyone who doesn't believe that.
Where somebody can have their position and they can pit it against somebody else. I saw this one. It was a Michael Knowles, and he sits down after a lecture that he has. He sits down with three students or three protesters, effectively, who disagreed with him, and he has the conversation with them. And I thought, you know what, like, I was so happy to see that these people came and they just sat down and they actually had the gall. Gall might not be the right word, but they had the ability to sit down and actually have this conversation with somebody that they vehemently disagreed with.
So the hardest part about that is not their bravery to talk to Michael Knowles himself. It's the bravery to withstand the criticism they're going to get from their colleagues and from people that are being like, you are giving them a platform. You're giving Michael Knowles clout, or you're giving him an opportunity to be anything other than some sort of, like the dark web area of the internet. So you have a lot of people that will criticize you for going on like that. So a lot of times they will either get, if they try to have reasonable conversations, they won't they won't be accepted back at home. The mama bear rejects them.
Right. Which I understand that's a really big negative that kind of comes out of that. But that's what
I think a lot of people would have a conversation if that weren't the case. So I'm saying like there are honest people out there that would like to have the actual conversation, but there's so many people that will criticize them for that, so they don't.
Yeah. And so but I think that's where we need to, in effect, force it, right? Like, okay, you guys want to come out and you guys want to protest. Well, you're not stopping me from speaking because I have this space. And this space, you can whine and you can cry and you can say whatever you want. But if you're not going to get up here and challenge what it is that I have to say using your own logic and reasoning, if you're not going to be able to do that, then you're losing. You're losing because I'm in this space and I'm able to make a point. I'm able to convince people. All you're able to do is say, hey, you know what?
So if you're talking about some sort of ring, some sort of not ring, but some sort of
an arena.
Yes, an arena, some sort of thing where you have ideas up there, and if there's nobody that can even pose up against it, you just by default win.
Yeah,
kind of.
And so
like,
at this
in the public
point,
opinion, at least, and so therefore, people will want to step up and try to participate in that level. I mean, okay. I mean, that'd be great. But then you can always go to how do we get there? How do we get there? So
you have to create the space and you have to set an example that cannot be ignored, right? You have to pick a topic that is, here's the way I kind of almost look at it is like, you have to create a hot topic, right? And you have to have representatives of both of those positions get together and clash it out, right? And so I think that the current times,
the winner gets 20 hours on this network for free. Or
no, there's nothing like that. It's I would say it's on Twitter. It's in this tab that's next to following, right? And it's in this space where you have, okay, here's somebody who is pro-trans, and they are going up against somebody who is.
I'm thinking about the incentive process to have people face each other, other than just ignore them, pretend they don't exist. So having an incentive. So like, what I mean is like if you,
because those people aren't getting anything. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
Like I'm just gonna pretend you don't exist, or just call you evil and never show up.
You know what I think they need?
Go by giving them incentive. That's why I said that time on a network or something like that. Like some sort of thing that happens if you don't show up by default.
Here's what I think could happen is it's really audience based to some degree. It's audience and it's attention and audience based. So what it can be is there's people, okay, I don't want to pin myself as a conservative because I'm trying to I would like to maintain my liberal status. But what I think needs to happen is that there are people who are so in favor of conversation and debates to take place. Is that a ice cream truck?
I turned it off.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, now I hear it. Hit the button again for a minute. There we go. Okay. And when it goes away, hit the button again. All right. Where was I? What we need is there are people like me who are so starved for people to have the conversation. So if somebody is willing, I'll take my position from the Michael Knowles and the activists and everything. If those activists were rejected, right? Me as myself, I would say I will do whatever I can to support that person continuing to be able to have that conversation. To continue. Look, they understand that they are sacrificing social circles. But what they gain out of those social circles is they gain another community of people who are at least willing to listen and understand them, right? I may disagree with them, but I'm not opposed to them. I'm not as a person, I want them to be able to speak their mind. I want to allow them to platform. And if my eyes looking at them brings them in profit and income through whatever kind of revenue service that gets provided through Twitter, I'm happy for it. I will happily support that person. But we need people to be able to step up to take charge on that kind of stuff. And who knows if they will, but I think if you got somebody to stand up and just, I mean, how many people? There's 350 plus million people in this country. You're telling me we can't find somebody who's willing to say, I'm going to stand here against Ben Shapiro or Michael Knowles or Matt Walsh, and I'm going to say, this is my stance, and I'm going to have this debate. And
that's interesting. You can have people that will choose themselves, but will other people also choose them?
I will choose anybody at this point in time. I will choose anybody who is willing to take that step forward.
So
and allow that conversation to happen, because that just means that invites other people.
What you need is for some people to step up, and with your idea in mind, it's like, you know what, I'll be that person. So
yeah,
and like
one person
believes it.
We just need one person who truly believes what they're saying to step up and say, this is what I'm gonna say this. This is the position that
so they're in that position. Then you got to get enough people that say, you know what, we agree that you represent us in this. We give you our blessing. Go forth and make the arguments. I mean,
that doesn't even need to be the start. Doesn't even need to be the start. It could just be somebody who says, this is what I believe. Because you know what that's going to do? I don't know if you've ever. Okay, this is something that I've seen happen in video games. I'm going to make a video game
analogy.
Sort of, yeah. If you have somebody who doesn't play video games and they're watching somebody play video games, the way that you can get somebody to play a video game who's not interested, right, is to have them watch and that you make decisions. And then something you can even do is you can make bad decisions that are obvious to the person who's watching.
Like and they'll say ads with those stupid tower games.
No. Like I'm playing the game. Like I'm playing a game. Say it's a tactics game, right? And they've been watching me play for hours or whatever. And I go and I say, I'm going to move my guy over here and I'm going to attack this guy. And they're going to sit there and think, that's not the move to make. You don't do that. Right. You should be doing this. And they may eventually get sick and tired of watching you make these stupid moves that they're going to say, give me the controller. Like, let me show you what needs to happen. Right. So that can happen. All you need is one person to get up there. It doesn't matter how bad they are at the argument, because there's going to be somebody else there who's like, that's not how you make the argument. You make the argument like this. This is how you do it. And then they get to step up to the plate. And when they step up to the plate, boom. And then you can have somebody else and somebody else. And now you have a plethora. Now you have lots of people. And that's where the audience is able to come together and say, this is the person who makes the best argument. We're going to pit this person up against, maybe they started off arguing against me, right? I'm just some Joe Schmo guy, doesn't know anything. I'm sitting here destroying this, person who's pro-trans or whatever it is that they're, whatever argument, trans ideology thing that they're pushing. And I'm like, there's problems. And I make such a powerful case that it shuts them down, but then somebody else is going to come up and then I shut them down. Somebody else comes up until somebody eventually shuts me down. And I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. Boom. In comes Michael Knowles. In comes Matt Walsh, right? Here comes the heavy hitters, right? The people with bigger influence. And now this other person who has kind of gone through the trials and tribulations of trying to figure out how to debate and make the point properly, they get to finally come up and go against Matt Walsh. How do their ideas pit up against Matt Walsh?
There was a debate that Michael Knowles was supposed to have against a professor, a trans professor, like a week ago.
Backed out.
That backed out the last day.
So don't get a trans professional. Get somebody who's gonna make that
An
trans
advocate.
professional.
Get one of the advocates. Yeah.
No, doesn't matter. Get somebody who's gonna make that trans professional or professor or whoever want to step in.
Okay. So
right?
get someone in there that says stupid stuff like, "Oh my gosh, this guy."
If nobody, not
Oh my
get
gosh,
somebody
this guy.
else.
And then you got people wanting to go in and make the better
I
argument.
want to make it clear. Don't get somebody else to be the test dummy. Just get somebody who's at least willing, because we're not even at a stage. We're not even at the stage where we can find people who are willing to do it. Just find somebody who's willing to do it, and over time, we can. It will bait more intelligent people who feel more passionately about it to step in, and who have more experience about it to step up to the plate. Because we're playing baseball, and we're pitching against people who aren't even hitting. Like we're pitching to the catcher, and there's nobody even at bat. That's basically what we're doing right now. And so you just got to get a batter up. Just get somebody up, and you can start your pitches. And boom, strikeout, 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 strikeout. Eventually, somebody's going to say, you know what? This team needs some help. And I think I'm better than this guy. I can at least do better than that. And it just escalates up. Boom, boom, boom.
Where does this start? Where does this form, you're talking about this happens in text form on Twitter? Is that what you're saying?
It can start in any format. But I think the place for it to really happen is on Twitter, and as far as the end game and having that real importance to it, because while it is one thing for people to be interested in audio and watching videos and stuff, that stuff can be really time consuming. I mean, we're sitting here at 52 minutes in, and I mean, it's hard for me to even expect people to want to stick around for this long. Hopefully we have been intriguing and interesting enough to have people last this long for anybody who ends up watching it. When it's text format, people can come and they can go, and it's there, and they can get triggered on, oh, this is something that I'm interested in, and then they can kind of go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and they can kind of come back to it. It's always something, and it's also an ever evolving conversation. So I think maybe the social realm of YouTube videos, you have people like Ben Shapiro or TYT. I mean, when you had Ben Shapiro debating Anna Kasparian, that's an important moment, I think.
Sure.
Because it brings two communities together. And if you could take those two communities who are coming together and you can pivot that attention off over towards Twitter, and that's where the conversation is really happening. That's like post. That's where it's like, look, I'm not having to think off the top of my head to come up with defensive arguments. So if I want to, I can take a day. I can take a week to make a response to something.
The type of thing you're talking about have happened over the years. They're just not a centralized place for everybody to view them, because not KVI, 770 KTTH. I haven't listened to AM radio in a little while, but they used to always have events, and I went to several of them. One where where Ben Shapiro was arguing against somebody on different ideas. They get a panel of people all up on the board, and they all take their positions. We purposely invite people over from different viewpoints and things, and it's like a full-on good debate, like you're talking about. We've had that type of thing, like 770 KTH themselves, and like I said, I've gone to
but it's limited, right?
Yes. Well, I mean,
I can't. Where am I going to go see it? Can I go?
Watch I guess I could probably search it up, but yeah.
But it's also not accessible.
Yeah.
Right. I got to know. I don't even know what KJTI or what KTTI.
It's 770 AM in Seattle area.
Boom. So we're talking about very localized AM radio station that nobody really pays much attention to, and that's where the value is. That's where the value that's supposed to be driving the conversation forward is located. That's not the place. That's not the place for it to be. Maybe it happens, but it needs to happen on a bigger stage. It needs to happen where everybody can see it. And I think Twitter is that place, at least currently. It's the place where there's a lot of people. And what I think is most important is that Twitter has people who are in gross opposition to Elon Musk. And I think that is very healthy. When you have people who hate Elon Musk on his platform, that is very, very valuable. You want to have multiple people. That's what you need. You need to have people from both sides. You don't want an echo chamber. You don't want bubbles. You need to enable these things. And you can drive those conversations by posting them and having these conversations that go boom, boom. And it's just this whole thing where you're able to respond to different aspects of the conversation. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I see there's like 10 of them on here, and they are posted on here. But and I sent you a link to one of them.
Yeah, I see. I opened in a new tab, so I'll check those. I'll check that out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's whatever. You don't have to watch it, but it's showing. I can't remember which one I went to, but I went to one of them. I didn't shake his hand though, so that was unfortunate.
Okay, so we're creeping up to the hour mark, and we want to try to make it to the hour, and I think I've kind of hit a good stopping point.
And I'm very mellow today. My mind isn't as active.
Hey, that works for me because I was just a big blabbermouth. I was just like, I got so much stuff and
get your idea out there. That's good.
Hey, I'm happy to get it out. And if that just so happens to unburden you a little bit, then that's great. That's great for the both of us.
I'm happy to chat, and like it's a job to learn how to communicate and to just develop a friend of sorts, and so I mean it's whatever. And hopefully at one point we can be consistently interesting instead of I'm sure there are some areas where it's quite dead and people are like I don't know, but
so far I mean I've tried listening back, and I need to give myself time. I only get like 2 minutes in to any of our videos upon re-listening, but that's just I don't want to. It's too fresh for me. So when it comes really down to it,
it's hard
later on in the future, like when I forget about the conversation and how it went, I can listen to it and I'll enjoy it a lot more. But I'm pretty sure that anybody who, I guess I shouldn't say I'm pretty sure. I hope that anybody who listens to this, and I might actually post this one in other places, just to see if maybe other people find it to be interesting.
Whatever.
But yeah, I guess I'm gonna end the recording if there's nothing else. All right, take it easy, guys. I'll see you on the next one.